The disagreement kicked off like they usually do, over something trivial. It was a Saturday morning, and I simply had to head to the hardware shop. I was in the process of constructing some bookcases for my study, and I required alternative fasteners. The keys to our sole vehicle, a luxurious SUV, were on the dish by the entrance where my wife, Amelia, prefers them placed. I snatched them, shouted that I'd return in an hour, and was on the verge of departing. "And where do you believe you're heading?" Her tone rang out from the upper landing, cutting and authoritative. She stood there with her limbs folded, gazing down at me. Not like a spouse, but like a headmaster about to assign a student punishment. "To the hardware shop," I replied, attempting to maintain my tone steady. "I require fasteners for the bookcases." She descended the stairs gradually, merely fixating on the keys in my grasp. "Did you inquire if you could use the vehicle?" I simply stared at her for a moment. The inquiry was so absurd. I'm a 42-year-old adult. I'm a senior associate at an architecture company. I don't require permission to go purchase fasteners. "It's our vehicle, Amelia," I stated. I could already sense my irritation building. "It's my vehicle," she retorted, with this slight grin. "The title is under my name. The policy is under my name. Your name isn't on any document for that automobile. It's an allowance for you to operate it, not an entitlement." And yes, technically, she was correct. When we acquired the vehicle 3 years prior, her father, who is a money advisor and handles our funds, claimed it was wiser for tax reasons to register it in her name. Like a fool, I agreed to evade a dispute. I covered the initial payment from my own funds, and the monthly installments come from our shared account, which my earnings primarily fill. But legally, it was hers. And now she was wielding that legality like a tool. "I need to visit the shop," I repeated, my tone growing firmer. She merely extended her palm. "The keys, Michael." I remained still. We just remained there glaring at each other. This wasn't about the vehicle, and we both recognized it. It was about dominance. It had always been about dominance. Her dominating the finances, our outings, even the thermostat setting in the home. This was just her being more blatant about it than normal. Eventually, her volume increased, and she barked, "No keys until you learn to request approval." I am not enduring this dispute every single weekend. I glanced at her palm, then at the keys, then at her expression. Her look was simply icy. And that was the breaking point. Something in my mind just locked in. A choice that had been accumulating for years finally solidified. This union wasn't just poor, it was a prison, and she had just shaken the gates one final time. I didn't shout. I didn't resist. I placed the keys directly in her palm. "Certainly," I said. My tone was composed, almost neutral. "You're correct, I should have inquired." The expression of total triumph on her face was quite a sight. She believed she'd prevailed. She believed she'd subdued me. She pivoted with a self-satisfied grin and ascended back upstairs, abandoning me there like a youth who'd just been restricted. She had no clue she hadn't just triumphed in a foolish spat. She had just initiated a landslide. Update 1. That weekend felt strange. I performed the role of the compliant, submissive spouse. I completed the bookcases with the incorrect fasteners. I passed the remaining time reading in my study. Anytime Amelia wished to venture out, I'd courteously inquire if I could accompany her. To the supermarket, to her folks for mid-morning meal. She was reveling in it, behaving all superior now that she'd succeeded, bestowing me the honor of sitting passenger in the vehicle I funded. But while I was pretending surrender, my thoughts were racing full speed. Listen, I'm an architect. My entire career involves detecting vulnerabilities in a framework before it fails. And our union was a doomed structure. I was about to begin orchestrating the teardown. On Monday morning, she transported me to the office. This was a fresh routine she initiated, and it felt just as degrading as you'd imagine. "I'll collect you at 5:30, she said like a parent leaving a child at school. The moment I entered my workspace, I began executing plans. Initial item on the agenda: achieve autonomy. At midday, I strolled to a vehicle dealer near my workspace. I didn't desire another SUV. I desired something personal. I trial drove a performance coupe I'd coveted for years. One Amelia always deemed unrealistic. I secured the lease immediately, utilizing funds from my individual reserves. The dealer stated they could deliver it to my office parking by day's end. Second on the agenda: sever the financial pipeline. Following the dealer, I visited an entirely separate bank. I established a fresh checking account, a fresh savings account, and a brokerage account. All solely in my name. Returning to the office, I accessed the company's personnel system and redirected my full salary to my new accounts. That concluded my funds flowing into the shared accounts Amelia and her dominated. Third and most crucial: assess the harm. For years, I'd allowed Amelia's father, Richard, to oversee our investments. He's a senior at a modest asset management company and had persuaded me he could yield superior gains. I had even granted him legal authority over my stock portfolio, which I held for a decade before meeting Amelia. It was a foolish error rooted in faith, and I was about to discover just how foolish. I devoted the afternoon to calls with my attorney, Ben. He's a predator who focuses on chaotic, high-value separations. I disclosed everything. Ben was direct. He stated I had to cancel Richard's legal authority right away and obtain an unbiased review of all he'd ever handled. He cautioned it would turn nasty. That night, I was waiting at the sidewalk when Amelia arrived. She wore that self-satisfied expression. Prepared to head home? She inquired. In fact, I said, I believe I'll operate myself. Perfectly timed, a transport truck from the dealer entered the lot. On the rear was my fresh vehicle, a dark coupe appearing fierce and prepared. The operator exited and passed me the keys. Amelia merely gawked, her jaw dropped as they lowered my vehicle. The expression on her face was memorable. It wasn't merely surprise or rage. I detected anxiety in her eyes for the first time in ages. It was the anxiety of a monarch who just observed a lowly piece advance to the end of the chessboard. "What is that?" she eventually uttered. "That," I said, raising my new keys, "is my vehicle, so I no longer need to seek approval." I entered and the aroma of fresh upholstery was fantastic. I glanced at her, still seated in her SUV, appearing utterly dumbfounded. I offered a small gesture and departed, abandoning her in my mirror. The initial explosion had detonated. Update 2. The journey home was exhilarating. I just absorbed the motor's sound. It was far superior to the strained quiet I'd grown accustomed to at home. When I entered the driveway, she was already present, having violated who knows how many rules to arrive first. She stood on the veranda, limbs folded, appearing enraged. "We must converse," she said, her tone subdued. "All right," I said and proceeded past her into the residence. She followed, banging the door. "You acquired a vehicle, a $60,000 vehicle, without even consulting me?" "Secured a lease, actually," I said. "And you're correct, I didn't." I reached a conclusion. I require a dependable means to commute and my access to the other vehicle turned restricted. Restricted? I just wanted you to inquire. It's basic respect, Michael. "No, Amelia," I said, at last facing her. "It's dominance and I'm finished participating. The new vehicle is merely the start of numerous shifts here." The fury on her face simply evaporated and she turned ashen. She began to appear frightened. "What does that imply?" "It implies I had a quite revealing discussion with my attorney today," I said, "and my new banking advisor. I'm reclaiming authority over my finances. My salary isn't entering the shared account anymore and I've cancelled your father's legal authority over my investments." Referencing her father was a precise strike. She actually recoiled. "You can't do that. My father is our investment guide. He has a plan for us." "He has a plan for himself," I countered. One that appears to include numerous hazardous ventures with my funds and little openness. I've demanded a complete review of every account he oversees. I'm quite curious to see what emerges. She just remained there, completely mute. She'd lost authority over the vehicle and now she was losing authority over the funds. Her entire dominance framework was crumbling in mere hours. The following days were a frigid conflict within our residence. She refused to communicate with me, just banged doors and held loud, irate calls with her mother. I didn't mind. I was occupied. I had a group of bookkeepers examining years of Richard's financial documents, and what they were uncovering wasn't positive. He had been excessively trading my accounts, executing numerous transactions just to produce fees for his company. He had placed a massive portion of my funds in a technology venture that failed. A firm he was a hidden investor in. He wasn't merely mishandling my funds. He was pilfering it. The true shocker arrived a week later. The reviewers discovered fund movements from my investment account to a corporation I'd never known. Turns out that corporation possessed the residence her parents occupied. He had utilized over $200,000 of my funds to settle his personal home loan. With the review report, I was prepared. I instructed Amelia to ensure her parents were at our residence on Saturday morning for a critical money talk. I instructed her to have them bring their attorney. I informed her my attorney, Ben, would attend too. They showed up behaving all insulted and challenging. Richard entered like he controlled the space, already grumbling and seeking explanations. This is a violation of confidence, Michael. After everything I've done for you. I said nothing. I just allowed Ben to lead. Ben was a predator. He serenely presented everything from the review, with diagrams and duplicates of the unlawful fund movements. He described, in basic language, the legal meanings of securities fraud and theft. As Ben spoke, Richard's face shifted from flushed to a sickly pale. The bold facade vanished and he just began perspiring. Amelia's mother appeared as if she might vomit. Amelia merely fixated on the surface in dread. When Ben finished, he pushed a paper across the surface. A parting contract. Here's the offer. Ben said, Michael is prepared to not pursue legal action against you, Richard. He's also prepared to not litigate your company into oblivion, which you would fail. In return, you will return every cent you took with added interest. And Amelia, he said, shifting to her, will execute this contract. She forfeits all claims to support and any stake in Michael's properties. Her name is removed from the title to this residence. She departs with her individual items and nothing more. Their attorney, who was obviously unprepared, began to dispute about shared properties. Ben just grinned. Are you certain you want to proceed? My next contact is to the prosecutor. Your client faces 10 years in federal custody. His daughter could be complicit. Your decision. Final update. The bargaining ended before it began. Confronted with incarceration, they surrendered. Richard, it emerged, had just sufficient funds hidden to reimburse me. He had to dispose of some assets and clear his own holdings. But the complete sum was transferred to my account within a week. Amelia executed the documents. She had no alternative. The day she vacated was silent. She gathered her items without a sound. Her expression just a veil of resentful fury. She didn't weep or shout. I think she was simply drained. The dominance scheme she and her father had been running for years had finally ensnared them. The last I heard. Her parents had to dispose of their grand residence and relocate to a modest apartment. With my funds removed and Richard's standing ruined, their lavish way of life was finished. His company is under scrutiny and he'll likely forfeit his certification. Amelia is residing with them. She had to secure actual employment as a retail clerk in a boutique. She's existing in a manner she never desired without the economic cushion she always assumed. A few months ago, I was heading home late from the workspace in my fresh vehicle. I stopped at a traffic signal and looked aside. It was her former SUV. She was in the operator's seat. Our gazes connected for a moment. She didn't appear furious. She just appeared hollow. The signal changed to green, but she didn't advance. I simply proceeded, abandoning her there in the vehicle she battled so fiercely to dominate. A vehicle that now symbolized everything she had forfeited.